Saddle up with AMSN this fall by registering for the 2025 AMSN Convention happening September 11 through 13 in Austin, Texas.
You're in for 3 days of medical surgical excitement.
At the convention, you'll join hundreds of like-minded nurses at enriching educational sessions led by over 80 industry speakers, 11 different networking and meetup opportunities, and so much more.
Elevate your medical surgical practice by joining us in Austin for #AMSN 2025.
Register now at amsn.org/events/AMSN Convention.
On this episode of Med-Surg Moments,
Confronting Violence and Injury in the Workplace, we're very pleased to welcome back AMSN President, Dr. Christy Reguin-Hartman.
I actually got sent to pediatrics recently. I was so scared.
We should take care of every patient as if there's like an angry parent watching over our shoulder.
We went camping on like the hottest day of the summer, of course.
My fiance and I just got back from Spain. We were visiting some of my girlfriends.
Then they had these big slides that my husband and I got on, and y'all, I don't do heights well. He literally dragged me on that big slide.
And I'm giving her meds, and I'm like, wow, I can't believe I'm a nurse. How did I get in this position? Like, I'm a nurse. I can't believe. Being an injured employee, it's kind of scary. It changes your life in many ways.
She was given insulin. Next thing I know, she started screaming like someone jabbed her.
this is Mary Tess.
Sam.
Eric.
Marcella.
Kellye.
And Sydney. Welcome to Med-Surg Moments, the AMSN podcast.
This podcast is an engaging look at the lives of and surrounding medical surgical nurses.
We're proud Med-Surg nurses just like you, sharing our stories, insights, and experiences to support you in your nursing journey.
Our topic today is confronting violence and injury in the workplace. But before we get started, we're very pleased to welcome back to the show a very special guest co-host, AMSN President, Dr. Christy Reguin-Hartman. Hello, Christy. Welcome back to Med-Surg Moments.
Hello. It's great to see you all. It's great to be here. Is there any better place to be? I don't think there is.
It's always great to have you with us. Why don't you get us started with any personal updates you may have?
Well, we're here in the heart of summer, so we are in concert season here in our household. So we have been out soaking up a little warm air with some good music. We actually listened to Kesha last night, which was really fun and interesting. And then I'm excited we're going to see a band on Thursday called Muscadine Bloodline. They're like a rock, country, bluesy sound, so that'll be pretty fun. This time of year, I just love to be outside, even though it's hot. I just love it. I want to be outside as much as possible. So that's really what's been going on for me. How about you, Marcella?
Let's see. At work, I'm still bouncing around in flow pool. And I actually got sent to pediatrics recently. I was so scared. But they kind of give you the older teenagers. They go up to 21. So I can't be scared of 18 to 21-year-olds. But I still am, you know. I got a 15-year-old, 18, and 21-year-old. And it was a good shift. I had no complaints. But I will say the same reason I could never do pediatrics. Even if a kid is there for just a tummy ache or a scrape, it's too sad for me. Of course, adults being sick is sad. But I don't know, maybe it's because I'm a mom. I'm too fragile when it comes to kids. Even the 21-year-olds, because they're still on the pediatric unit, sometimes they have chronic illness. So if you're used to coming to the pediatric unit, I'm sure it's really hard to make that transition. So even them, I had a soft place in my heart for them too. It was kind of a nice self-reflection for like, aren't I extra careful on regular adult med-surg units too? But it's just kind of a reminder the next time I'm taking care of my adult patients, they're all someone's daughter or son, and they were 10 years old at one point. And so just that extra reminder to be extra careful, it kind of gave me a little reminder. When someone's sick in the hospital, it doesn't matter if they're 42 or 15, I got to be that person that's there for them. One compliment I got on that unit, it was, thank you for being so independent. I felt flattered because I didn't feel independent that day, but it felt good to be recognized in that way. And then personal updates. Summer continues. We still got our summer bucket list with the kids. We checked off a couple more things. We went camping on like the hottest day of the summer, of course. It just turned out that way. But the kids did great. A lot of them, it was their first time camping. We have this giant tent and we all just piled in with a few inflatable mattresses and they handled the heat really great. They slept all night. I was so surprised. So that was a success, even though it was almost 100 degrees. We also did the aquarium, which was cool. I hadn't been to Chicago's aquarium in years. Living in Chicago, I forget that we have all kinds of cool stuff. So our kids are the reminder to go do the touristy things. Sydney, what's going on with you?
I love what you said about taking care of patients, like extra careful no matter what. That's such a good reminder of that. Everyone is someone's loved one. We should take care of every patient as if there's like an angry parent watching over our shoulder.
Exactly.
For my personal update, my fiance and I just got back from Spain. We were visiting some of my girlfriends that are still stationed out there before we're all split up around the world again at the end of the year. It was just so much fun. It was nice to be back. Still vacation, but somewhere familiar. We didn't have to look up any restaurants or figure out what to do. We just got to hang out with our friends at the beach and it was perfect. Our next trip, we're going to Vegas in a couple weeks. This time for a wedding, so not necessarily vacation, but it's still going to be really fun. Kellye, what's new with you?
For me, I remember my last updates, I was telling you guys about my kids on their summer camp for the summer. And I said I had a couple days in the week to enjoy my Monday through Friday kid list. And I had some projects to do around the house. Well, lo and behold, none of those projects got done. Those DIYs and things I wanted to do in the front, in the backyard, y'all, I just was too exhausted to get it done. I think I used my time better focusing on myself and just resting. Couple of times where I did pick up an extra shift every now and then, but I said to myself, no, I want to just focus on myself this summer, have a good time. Summer is my favorite season. We did take a quick beach trip though, the kids and my husband and I, and we did Myrtle Beach this year. And so it was very fun. Usually we go to the beach and come right back, but my daughter wanted to do a water park. So we did Myrtle Waves and it was very exciting. I think I had a great time just like the kids did. They had different sections of the park where you just enjoyed the waves, another section where you can do the lazy river. Then they had these big slides that my husband and I got on, and y'all, I don't do heights well. He literally dragged me on that big slide. And, at first I was very nervous, but I said, you know what? You only live once. So I enjoyed it, got over my fear of the heights, being in the water. So that was kind of something fun that we did. And then for my work updates, it's kind of been stable. Onboarding my 2 new residents, and we're still in the orientation phases where they're getting to know the unit, getting to know the staff, learning about the routine, the different codes, and where's the restrooms and which staff bathrooms you use on this side of the building and things like that. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. So still excited to do what I do. So what about you, Eric? What's been new with you?
Good to be back. I know I was away for an episode or two. I've kind of been easing back into the work life, trying to balance work and personal life. Back to what Christy said, it kind of started our summer concert season over here as well. So we've been kind of seeing some shows. Lady Gaga played in San Francisco. That was a big, crazy, exciting show, but it was fun. We saw some other acts in San Jose and just kind of around town. It's been a really unusually cool summer, at least for us over here in San Francisco in the Bay Area. So it's been really nice. I mean, like, you're kind of just terrified of waking up and waiting to see those triple digits hit. But it's been like 70s and 80s this whole summer. So it's like awesome. But I was listening to Maricela, which she was talking about, like, this is everyone's kid and all this stuff. And I was at work the other day, and sometimes it hits me. I don't know if it hits anyone else. I was talking to my patient. I was giving her meds and she was all like wiggling on the bed, like, oh, and I'm giving her meds. And I'm like, wow, I can't believe I'm a nurse. I'm like, it's okay, it's okay. And then I like see my reflection in like the back of a upturned spoon on her table. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, how did I get in this position? Like, I'm a nurse. I can't believe it. Like, people trust me with stuff. And it's like terrifying.
I never shake that imposter syndrome when it comes to nursing. I don't know if it's because I grew up not knowing I was going to be a nurse, but the same feeling as you, Eric.
Yeah. I'm in my second hospital. I've only been in 2 hospitals. And the first one I came from was a trauma center. And I think that gave me a really good foundation. And the one I moved to is not really a trauma center, but sometimes I get a little comfortable. You know, like you ever think like you could just do the things with your eyes closed, which is scary. And that's why I always remind myself, no. Except for that, you know what I'm really obsessed with right now? I want to get a deep plane facial. Have you guys seen that? Like the people that do it look so good. And I don't know why, but like in my downtime, I'm looking it up as I inch closer to 40. I think my life's 75% of the way over. And I think, wow, if I didn't have this beard, would I snatch my face up? I don't know. I guess those are my updates.
I think that that's a very California thing to say. But I do have to say that imposter syndrome, I don't think it ever goes away. I'll tell you, every time I'm on a plane and they ring for medical assistance, that's when I get it still. And I'm like, oh, I am the nurse here. Okay, well, let's go be helpful. But I believe strongly that the best nurses are those that still have that little bit of, what am I doing? Let me double check. If you get too confident, that's when we maybe are a little bit more prone to errors and challenges. And so I wouldn't call it imposter syndrome, but I would call it checking your bases and making sure you're doing the right thing. And I think it says something about you that that's what you're still doing. Same for me to this day.
Very true. I've heard that about parenting too. It's like, if you're worried about being a bad parent, you're probably doing things to prevent yourself from being a bad parent. So same with nursing.
We're worried someone's going to find out you're a bad parent.
My kids decide that in the end. We'll see what they say in 20 years.
Why don't we move on to our topic today, confronting violence and injury in the workplace. If you've ever left the shift feeling shaken or worse, hurt, you're not alone. Today, we're opening up about the emotional and physical toll of workplace violence and what it really means to keep showing up after being harmed on the job. I'll get the conversation started. Since I feel like the poster child for workplace injuries at work, since I pretty much started my tenure here being an injured employee, it's kind of scary. It changes your life in many ways, not just work, but your personal life.
I actually witnessed a coworker of mine. She was going into a room, and she's a seasoned nurse, going into the room to give insulin injection. And so, as we know, the 2 persons identifiers, I witnessed with her 2 units that she was giving to her patient. She went in the room. She seemed kind of bothered by the family members. She went in, she was given the insulin. Next thing I know, she started screaming like someone jabbed her with an axe or something. It was just this loud, terrible scream. And I'm like, what is going on? And so I rushed to her, and she was standing there with the needle in her hand. And she said, I stick myself. And I said, oh no. So immediately I grabbed her out the room because the patient was looking like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. The patient started crying. And so I grabbed her out of the room. We walked to the nurse's station, and I said, charge nurse, this is what happened. She sticked herself. Immediately we called the supervisor right then and there. She was sent to employee health. Immediately, I took over her patients. They had to write an incident report. She was just so shooken up. She didn't know what to do. She didn't even think to contact the charge nurse because she wanted to go to the bathroom. Then I heard she was leaving to go home. She didn't know whether the patient had HIV. It was just so many things running through her head. I tried to keep her calm as best as possible, but we just did like a mini in-service about what do you do when you get stick by a needle injury. The things that you are supposed to do, and just calming her down is all I can think about. So I just wanted to piggyback off what you said, to just do the steps that you know to do, keep the person calm if it's your coworker who was injured, and just try to follow your chain of command as best as possible. Make sure you also document, because I later had to give a statement as to what happened as well. The patient had to get several blood tests as well. So it was a big process after that. So the most thing I can tell myself was to try to keep her calm as best as I can and keep myself calm. So that's kind of my story.
That's a really good point. I wasn't even thinking that side of this conversation of workplace violence and injury, but what you say is true for either situation is following what you know, following your process, going up your chain of command, and sticking to what you know and what's best and protecting yourself, because needle sticks are just as scary as any other type of injury. I'm fortunate that I've never gotten physically injured by a patient. I have had a needle stick, which is scary, but there's other been situations, whether it's verbal violence, close calls. We had a patient one time that we were changing shift. It was crazy, a lot of noise, all phones going off. And my roommate at the time, actually, she was sitting next to me at the nurse's station, and I just hear her start to stand up, and she goes, I think they need some help in there. And we go in, and there's this patient who's got TPN and heparin on, going through a PICC line, and he's got like 4 drains, and he's just swinging the IV pole at this poor nurse who's like 4'8" on a good day, and she's just ducking. Mr. So-and-so, sit down, sit down. That was a close call, and we were able to diffuse the situation, but those can very easily not go that way. And she or any of us that were trying to intervene could have very easily gotten hurt. Knowing who to involve in those situations, how to diffuse in those situations, and if it gets to that point, what kind of codes to call. Every place that I've worked has had a violent person or agitated person type of code that you can call it, kind of get reinforcements of special teams that are trained to diffuse those situations. So luckily, I've been fortunate enough to not have personally experienced physical violence, but there's definitely all kinds of things that take a toll on you at the end of the day.
Most of my experiences where I get hands-on or the patients get hands-on, definitely dementia, Alzheimer's, disoriented from medications, or extended hospital stays.
Yeah, extended hospital stays really cause some severe delirium, especially when it's a complicated medical process and something that wasn't supposed to be as complicated as it was. That was supposed to be probably a week admission turned into 3 months at that point. And he already was a post-stroke patient, wasn't great at communicating his needs. And I think that was part of the frustration in that moment. There's a lot that can go into those types of situations. And a lot of it too that can help diffuse those situations is knowing your patient and knowing how to communicate with them and what sets them off. Maybe first thing in the morning isn't the best time to drop a bunch of news on a sleep-deprived, probably confused patient.
Absolutely. Hospital delirium is a crazy thing. It always frightens me. I had a patient who was completely A&O. One time I was in the room. Next time I walk in, she is mumbling, and we did kind of a stroke workup, mumbling, not answering appropriately, even incontinence. This was an upper lip patient. And we checked off everything on the list that you can, sugar. We did a CT of her head. And then the family said, oh, you know what we forgot to mention? This happened the last time she was in the hospital. She gets intense hospital delirium even after just a couple of days. I said, well, that would have been good to know. But definitely, no matter the situation, whether it's a confused patient or a behavioral patient, which is usually some mental health history tied into that when it's behavioral. So either way, whatever the reason it's behavioral, the de-escalation comes first. There's usually signs before people are throwing fists and throwing poles. So I like to kind of look out for that, especially when I get in report, oh, they used to be kind of confrontational and they were on restraints for a while, but they haven't been a problem in a while. I had a patient who had to stay in our unit. They were looking for placement for someone with mental health issues. And when they're looking for placement for them, at least in Chicago, it can be months that they're on your unit and they're medically stable. So this patient in particular, 3 months ago, she was daily on restraints because of violent behavior. And then everyone got comfortable and no longer a sitter, no longer restraints, daily vitals, if that, because they're really just waiting for placement. Months later, this person ends up punching my coworkers and went on a violent rampage on the unit. So I feel like when I hear that history, I make sure to still look out for those de-escalation signs. If the person is restless, if they are verbally getting aggressive, like you said, verbal aggression is some of the first signs that we see too. The de-escalation involves orienting them to the day, the time, because these clocks on the walls are not enough to keep people in reality sometimes.
Marcella, your story about the family remembering later that the patient has gotten that delirium, all I could think is our EHRs really fail us sometimes. We've got to work on that. That's an episode for another day, I suppose. But I think when you're talking about delirium, I think of two things. One is how much control we take away from adults. You talked about pediatric patients earlier, and how much control we take away from an adult patient when they come into a hospital. They no longer have any control over what they're eating, when they're eating, what they're doing with their time. And I think that contributes to that delirium piece, and then sometimes to that agitation, especially those folks with those behavioral issues. And I think the part that's important is we've got to remember to use our care teams and get our prescribing partners and our pharmacists on board so that we're giving the right meds at the right times, so that one, those things don't happen, and then two, we've got an opportunity to treat them when they do, so we're not trying to play catch up all the time.
Exactly. Looking at their personal care plan is a huge deal, because depending on how long they've been there, it could be a psych note from 2 weeks ago that has super pertinent information. Approach the patient this way. That's why I actually do like to go through those notes for those patients, because they might not have a lot medically that you can do at that point. But take a look at their PRNs, make sure they're updated. Sometimes when they first come in, there's really aggressive as needed medications for agitation, and no one has looked at them in a while, and they might need to be adjusted either to calm them down or first line, like try this first, don't give them this. And it's really tricky because when it's behavioral, it changes over time. Like I said, someone could be stable for, like this person was 2 months that they went without any behavioral issues, and then they became physical again. So reading through those psych notes of what's recommended and how to approach the patient is really important. I will say that I've been seeing it more, at least in Chicago, inner city might be more common. These patients are on Med-Surg units, and it does get overwhelming at times because these are long-term patients on a unit that you're supposed to be moving people in and out, and you need to become an expert in behavioral health, but also they're waiting extended times, and it's more and more patients. I definitely feel like since COVID, a lot of things went by the wayside. Chronic health, a lot of cancer was missed when people were trying to avoid hospitals. And then the same thing for the homeless and the mental health. We really got to tackle it, because I think it's starting to avalanche a little bit onto the Med-Surg units, because everything falls in the end to us Med-Surg nurses. We can handle it all. So they just kind of put it off to us. But I do think it's an escalating issue.
It's not just physical. There's also the verbal abuse and the verbal violence that I think you got to take into account. I also feel like sometimes you kind of forget, or I see nurses that kind of forget that they're a nurse, and they match that energy with the energy they're being presented with, which is the worst thing you could do. They're in a different position. They're not in a position where they're coming at you from maybe a logical standpoint. So why are you matching their energy? The only thing you're doing is escalating that as opposed to de-escalating it. And it might sound disturbing, but those are my favorite patients to take. I love the aggressive, hostile patients, the irrational patients. I think of it like a little personal challenge. I'm going to get them to listen to me. I'm going to get them to see that I'm here to help, and I'm going to get them to love me. And then I'm done. Last week, we had one of those patients. I started my shift, 2:55 p.m. He just blew up. Screaming and cursing and hollering and threatening the staff. He just wanted to use the bathroom. No one was listening to him. You take away so much of his control. We monitor every single little thing they do. We monitor what they eat, what they output, who they speak with, or what they're taking. We take away all of their control. And he just wanted to go to the bathroom. That's all I wanted. I got him up. He peed and he was good. And then he became my patient because, of course, I take all of those kind of patients. Sometimes they say I'm intimidating just because being a guy and big and tall and everything. But I think there's a lot of compassion that we can give to those types of patients. Even if they don't understand it, it's really good at enforcing your humanity to care for someone that maybe isn't understanding or isn't giving back what you're giving.
And that's an excellent point. I do have a coworker. She cannot handle those patients. She loves to take on those patients, but she feels if she matches those energies, she can get them to listen and try to control the patient. Maybe on one or two of those patients, she can do that, but it backfired on her with a patient that came in wanting his lactulose. And she and him had a very, very back and forth type conversation. And our charge nurse had to step in to de-escalate the situation, to get her out of the room and get another nurse on the case because she was not handling it the right way. And just teaching the newer nurses to make sure they understand that it's your emotional intelligence as well to know how to deal with these type of patients, because we're seeing a huge increase in the mental health patients that it may have been missed or unnoticed upon admission. And then we are catching these things as we are reacting and having these conversations with the patients.
Kind of on the same but opposite spectrum is, as the nurse, you also don't have to take that. As long as the patient is being safe, it is totally within your right to say, I don't appreciate being spoken to this way. I'm going to give you a few minutes to take a deep breath and calm down, and I'm going to come back and we're going to try again. You don't need to stand there and take verbal abuse if the patient is safe. If all their needs are met and someone is just being aggressive to be aggressive, it's okay to take a step out, take a breath, and come back. And I think that's something we forget because we are so compassionate. We want to make the patient understand that we're there to care for them, but that takes a mental toll being treated that way because that's not how people who are there to care for should be talked to.
Absolutely. I don't mind if someone's behavioral or mental or if they're aggressive towards me, but I never let anyone disrespect me. I say, you are speaking to me at a level and a way that I am not speaking to you. I said, I don't know why you're speaking to me like this or why you think you can, but I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to collect yourself. And when you feel like you can speak like an adult, we can talk. But again, they just might have some underlying issues that they just can't control it or don't know how to process it. We're speaking of all these concerns that are coming up, but what does it do to the nurse? Are you able to just shake it off? You feel like you take it home? How do you process that?
With that, Eric, I try to decompress while I'm at the workplace. To me, after I give shift report, I have to find someone that I can trust, I can talk to just let it out because they understand what we go through from day to day before I get to the house. But that's how I feel. That's how I handle it. What about you all?
Being the PRN nurse, I feel a responsibility to sometimes take on that load because I'm not back tomorrow. I can take it pretty heavy, and sometimes I tell another nurse, you know what? And they're like, no, it's my problem. It's my patient. Hey, I'm not back tomorrow. So I'm able to take that on, and how much time you spend at work makes that difference too.
Kellye, I've got those friends that call me on their way home and they're like, I just need to talk to someone because my husband's not going to understand any of these words that I'm saying. Because you're right, being a nurse, you just have to speak to another nurse to understand.
I'm only speaking to my coworkers that are there with me. That's the exception.
Exactly. I think if we told some people sometimes like what we went through at work, they'd be like, you need to quit your job.
Yep.
When they go, I'm like, no, you don't get it. Because you wouldn't say, you'd say, no, they didn't. It's like, you don't understand what I'm telling you. Get out of here.
This podcast got me through some of those hard times that you guys are talking about. Driving to work, especially, in Flow Pool in a new hospital, I don't know anybody, so I can't do that at work decompression really. Sometimes, you just kind of click with someone on the shift, but really listening to this podcast, listening to you guys just chat, it reminded me that I'm a professional and I'm a part of a really big, awesome club. And just listening on the way home from work helped me decompress 100%.
That's everything right there. You have to have your group. You have to have your people in whatever format you're getting them in that you can debrief with, decompress. And even Eric, you had some great phrases in that sentence of how you talk to your patient. And I think that's challenging sometimes, just figuring out the right words and somebody to kick those around with, well, how do you word it when this happens? And how do we make it better? And I think that's just critically important in how we survive and grow and advance and stay nurses for our whole long, happy, healthy careers, hopefully. AMSN is doing a couple things for workplace violence in regards to our advocacy group. So we've had folks working on and advocating for some legislation that's been on the national scene, really trying to push OSHA to put in some standards on what would be considered safe work environments. And so AMSN has had teams on that realm for a long time. Unfortunately, those things don't seem to move very quickly, but have worked on that. And we also have a couple of education sessions in our next convention focused on some different avenues for approaching these really difficult situations. And so hopefully a little bit of that will contribute as well.
That's really exciting, Christy. Thank you for that update. Well, believe it or not, we're just about out of time. But before we close, let's go around and have each of you share your biggest takeaway from this important conversation.
Definitely, I need to pay attention to more of what Christy mentioned. Just reminders, little courses and recommendations on how to handle these situations. Because being on the job longer, I forget that there's so many resources that I can just keep learning and learning and learning. So I'm going to do a little refresher course on that. I don't know it all, so I'll do that.
My biggest takeaway is I'd come work a shift with any of y'all. Wouldn't we be the best team all together? Let's do that shift. We could staff a unit. I don't want it to be the peds unit though either, Marcella. I'd rather it be the traditional adult med-surg, but that's one of my biggest takeaways. We'd have an awesome debrief at the end of the shift where we, in a perfect world,
have mimosas.
If you insist.
And no one would mess with us on our shift. That's for sure.
One of my takeaways I would say is to just be mindful while I'm taking care of these patients. Take that time to make sure I de-escalate the situation. And if I see my coworker going left field, for me to be empowered to help her de-escalate the situation instead of just stepping back and stepping aside and things like that. Just try to help de-escalate as much as possible.
Referee. Yeah.
Yes, correct.
I think a good takeaway is not just being a patient advocate, but being a coworker advocate, like Kellye said, when her patient got stuck and she had to kind of take over and assist her and help her. I think that's a good point to remember as well.
My biggest takeaway is what Christy said, is not being just a coworker advocate, but a national advocate, and letting people know that it's a dangerous job, it's a hard job, and we need more regulations in place to protect nurses.
It's such a hard job. It is. I think people forget that. It's a hard job. Everyone out there listening, it is a very hard job. Don't do it. No, I'm kidding. Do it. It's great. It's rewarding. Christy, before we go, we want to thank you so much once again for taking the time to be with us today.
I enjoyed it as always, especially this topic. It's challenging and difficult, and yet we could just hear of all the positive movement that's happening and all the great work that everyone's doing. I can't wait to come hang out again. Hopefully you'll let me come by soon.
We can't wait to have you back. To our listeners, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
We look forward to connecting with you on the next episode of Med-Surg Moments, the AMSN podcast.
In the meantime, we encourage you to subscribe to Med-Surg Moments wherever you listen to podcasts.
To reach us, use hashtag Med-Surg-Moments on your social posts.
Or send us an email at amsnpod@amsn.org. That's amsnpod@amsn.org.
We are all AMSN members, and if you love Med-Surg Moments, we invite you to become a member of AMSN. You can learn more at www.amsn.org.
Finally, the content within the Med-Surg Moments podcast represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of the co-hosts and may not necessarily reflect the views, thoughts, and opinions of the Academy of Medical Surgical Nurses.
Until next time, this is Eric,
Mary Tess,
Sam,
Kellye,
Marcella,
And Sydney. And always remember, Med-Surg Moments is a moment in our lives and a moment in our Med-Surg careers that makes a huge difference.